At this time, we'll call to order the committee of the whole meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer?
Here.
Commissioner Allen?
Here.
Commissioner Klicka?
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Here.
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Chairman Eilert?
Here. We do have a quorum present. I understand no action is required today, but this is additional information regarding the Tomahawk Creek wastewater rebuild or expansion, whatever you want to call it. So, Susan?
Good morning, Chairman. Susan Pekarik with Wastewater. Penny, did you want to make any opening statements this morning?
Sure. I would like to say that I'll let Susan do the introductions of the team that's here. But, Chairman, you are correct. We're not asking for action this morning. However, we wanted to do this to give you an update since this is our largest county project. We do have action items coming later this month. So we wanted to give you a full briefing in anticipation of those items. And we do have some project updates. So, Susan, I'll let you take it from here. Thank you for being here, team.
All right. Thank you, Penny, very much. As Penny said, I would like to introduce the members of my team that are here with me today. I'm going to move this so I can sit back just a bit. We're happy to be here today, happy to give you these updates. And so I'm going to start from my left here. I've got Tammy Lorenzen. She is the engineering manager for our existing infrastructure. I have Aaron Witt. He's the chief engineer for wastewater. And then to my right, I've got Derek Cambridge of Black & Veatch. Black & Veatch and HDR are the design team for this project. And I've got Dan Ward from McCarthy, who is the construction manager at risk for this project. And so, go ahead and advance this here. Oops. So over the next few minutes, we're going to show you that this project is still the right decision. And we'll show you how we're controlling our long-term rates. We'll talk through the construction manager at risk process, or CMAR process. You'll hear us refer to the CMAR process throughout this presentation, and we'll talk about how this process was important to the success of the project. We'll talk
Susan,
about...
Is this
yes,
photo you have, is that the current plant or the proposed facility?
This is the proposed facility. Okay. Yeah. We'll talk about our project costs, where we started and where we are today. And then we're going to finish up with our extensive value engineering process and the extensive efforts that the team undertook and achieved as part of that process. Thank you. There we go. So I want to start with our goal. Our goal is to make sure that the Tomahawk project does not impact the rate projections that we shared with you last year as part of the budget process. We've been evaluating our capital improvement program to look for areas where we can reduce so that the Tomahawk project doesn't impact the capital portion of our rates. We're currently in the process of updating our financial model and our rate projections that we do every year as part of the budget process, and we'll be coming back to you here in the coming months as part of the budget process to present that information. We're also evaluating the bond market to identify any potential impacts from the recent activity there as well. So even though we're seeing slightly higher project cost, building the expanded facility is still the right decision. Both from, it is the alternative which has the lowest impacts to our rates, as well as it is the best environmental solution. This graph shows you the cumulative revenue requirement comparison between the two lowest cost options that we had presented to you a couple of years ago. The blue line on this graph represents the Tomahawk project that we're talking about, a 19 million gallon a day facility. The red line represents the next lowest cost option, which was a 10 million gallon a day facility. And in that case, it's similar to how we operate the plant now, where we would be sending a portion of the flow to Kansas City, Missouri to treat. If you look over the graph over a 35-year period, you can see there's a significant savings overall for revenue requirement from building the expanded facility.
Susan, the current cost of what, about 50 or 60% of the flow goes to Kansas City, Missouri. What do we currently pay for that, and what's the projected cost if we continue as is?
So currently, it's actually a little closer to 75% of what we pay Kansas City, Missouri is from this site. And we're currently paying them in the $15 million, I'm looking at Aaron to confirm, so it's about $15 million a year annually from the Tomahawk site to Kansas City, Missouri, of the total that we pay. When we are talking about the end of the project, so in 2021, we're projecting that up to be about $26 million a year.
Okay.
Okay?
So there's about $11 million increase in fees to Kansas City, Missouri if we do nothing.
That is correct, sir. Well, we'll see those increases, but once the plant is constructed, then we would not be sending that flow to Kansas City, Missouri. So yes, that's correct.
Right. Mr. Ashcraft?
Mr. Chairman, yes. Mr. Carrick, on the 35-year projections, does that assume, what level of build-out does that assume for the service district? Is that 100%, 50%? How do you project that out?
That is 100% build-out. So that is the full 19 MGD expansion. You may recall last year we discussed the project as part of an update, and we did our original analysis based on our current flows. But we have, there's growth in that area. We do have flows that we'll be sending to the Tomahawk treatment plant. So that projection is based on full build-out.
Does it assume redevelopment and changes in density?
Yes, we do our designs based on tributary areas, so that's all included there. Yep.
Thank you.
Do you have a slide showing the area that flows into this plant?
We don't have that with us
Could
today,
you
I'm sorry.
explain? I mean, it's both Prairie Village, Overland Park, Leewood,
Olathe.
parts of Olathe? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it goes about as far, it generally follows the lower Indian Creek watershed, so essentially, and I'll look to Aaron to correct me if I say this wrong, but east of Antioch, and if you follow Indian Creek on down, so those are the parts from Overland Park, Prairie Village, and Leewood that flow there. And then Tomahawk Creek, which flows as far south as about 159th Street. So Tomahawk Creek all the way up to the treatment plant there at College and Mission where it empties
So it is a
out.
very large area.
It's a very large area, correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Whitcomb.
So Susan, basically, I'm putting this in simple terms, especially for those that are paying attention to this. One of our core functions as county government is the provision of a sewer system for this county. Presently, the geography that you mentioned, the flow of the sewage is in fact going to Kansas City. And it's being processed, or a portion of it, it's being processed through Kansas City, Missouri. At which point we have limited control over cost impacts of what that's going to cost to our citizens short-term as well as long-term. The study that you read, the study that has been going on for the last 4 or 5, however many years, has evaluated potential costs of what that is going to be. And you are recommending at this point, we will embark on probably our largest capital project, which will be in tune of $275 to $300 million project. And by doing that today, we will be in fact, based on the cost that we would have to pay to Kansas City and the various other EPA issues and things like this for trying to upgrade and so forth, you're suggesting that by doing our own thing here, we have the potential, even with the capital improvement here, of saving about 3/4, almost $800 million over a 35-year period.
That's correct. Those are based on, yes, that's correct.
All right. Thank you.
I think we're done.
It's your
Continue,
committee of
please.
the whole. Oh, okay. Well, Aaron's going to talk us through CMAR and the project costs here.
Thank you, Susan. So as a quick reminder on why we chose the construction manager at risk procedure or process, the project's technically challenging. We have a small plant site that's prone to flooding, and then also we'll be sending all of the flow to Kansas City, Missouri while we're constructing this project. We also wanted collaboration from the team to both have a constructability review on the project as well as a value engineering effort so we could make sure we optimize the design. And then early on in the process, we wanted to make sure that we had certainty on both our cost and our schedule. That way we can make adjustments as we needed to, and we'll talk through some of those adjustments today. And then as far as the schedule goes, the schedule was critical in that we're sending all of our flow to Kansas City, Missouri. So at the end in 2021, when we're getting ready to complete the project, it will be costing us as much as $26 million a year, or a little over $2 million a month when we're sending flow to them. So we want to make sure we meet that schedule. So this process has allowed us to confirm that schedule. And then finally, this process has allowed us to accomplish a lot in a short period of time, and we've been able to work as a team to mitigate the risks that are associated with this project. I'd like to talk through where we started as far as the budget with this process and where we're currently at. If you look in the upper left-hand portion of the table, the $306 million, that was our budget that we had set initially following the study in early 2016. And then the bottom right-hand portion of the table, that's where we're currently at, around $335 million, or about a 9% increase over that original budget back in early 2016. We'll talk through some of the reasons why we've had an increase. One is the Kansas City Power and Light substation. One unknown during the study phase was what the loads were that we were going to need required to serve this plant. And the plant is in the middle of Leawood. Our current plant is currently served, so we really didn't realize that they were going to have to do an upgrade to serve this new plant. So in talking with them, it was really between our 30% design and 60% design last summer when we could sit down with KCP&L and talk to them, that they said that they would need to do upgrades, significant upgrades, to be able to serve the plant. Their initial proposal was to do an upgrade at 2 substations, one in Prairie Village near 90th and Row, the other near 103rd and State Line. That would also require significant upgrades to the infrastructure to bring that power to the plant, so it would be really disruptive to the neighborhoods. So after further discussion with them, that's where we came up with the option that was both, it was less cost to build a substation at the plant and obviously less disruptive to the neighborhoods. As far as the risk profile, the next item you see there, that's just it, us quantifying the risk associated with the project. As part of the project, we have $75,000 a day for liquidated damages if we do not meet the schedule. That's based on the cost it is for us to send flow to Kansas City, Missouri. So if we don't meet the schedule, we've passed on that liquidated damage or that risk on as part of this project. So at that time, we didn't realize market impact it would have to do that. That level of liquidated damages is extremely high and unusual for a project. Typically, you would see more in the probably $5,000 a day range, so that does have an impact.
Aaron, can you pull that microphone a little closer?
Yes. So that can have an impact on the market. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. The next item is enhancements, and that's really things that we've worked through with the city as we've worked on the project. It includes screening of rooftop equipment, additional landscaping, aesthetic fencing, security fence along Lee Boulevard versus the typical chain link and barbed wire that we would have. And then the last item is really an adjustment on how we projected up our cost from 2016. We had inflated our cost from 2016 using about 2% inflation. And looking over the past couple of years at the Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index, that's really a little over 3.4% is what we were seeing. So that impact was about $21 million just based on the market over the last couple of years.
Mr. Allen, yeah.
I have a question on the Kansas City Power and Light substation. So that projected $10,462,000, that's the cost that we would have to absorb? Okay.
Yes.
I just thought, I wasn't aware of that because this plant is going to be a tremendous user of electricity, even though I know it'll be more efficient. So over the life of that plant, we would have, I assume, hundreds of millions of dollars in electrical bills. So it's going to be increased, but then they charge us to build a substation. I wasn't aware of that. All my years of public service that when you're a major user, that we would have to absorb that cost. So kind of surprised.
And they did take into account some of what our our new bills would be in coming up with that cost that we would need to reimburse them for the substation.
So they're getting a brand-new substation out of it and with more power. Yeah, bigger user. I don't know, it just doesn't sound right to me, but you're the specialist on it, so.
It helps if you're a monopoly.
Okay.
So if we knew back in 2016 what we know now, our projected budget would be more in the $349 million range. The second column is really after we brought McCarthy on as the construction manager at risk last April. One of their first tasks was to take the 30% design that Black & Veatch and HDR had prepared and prepare a 30% cost model, or a detailed bottoms-up cost estimate on where we were at. At that point, as far as the baseline budget, you can see it was about $57 million over where we currently were projecting. At that time, we hadn't included the substation or the risk profile, so the total cost in June was around $383 million, where we were projecting. So that sparked a very vigorous valued engineering effort so that we could work down towards our budget, and that's where we've ended up today. As you can see, the cost is in the $335 million range. You'll notice the KCP&L substation cost has changed slightly. It hasn't gone down. We've included about $2.5 million worth of earthwork in that baseline budget that McCarthy will take care of. So that's where we're at currently today. We'd like to talk through a little bit more on that value engineering effort, and I'll let Dan talk to that.
One clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Aaron, how come you compare the baseline budget of March 16 to the total project costs? You said it was a 9% increase. Why do you not compare total project costs between March of 16 and March of 18?
When we originally started from our budget back in 2016, early 2016, that's what we knew at that point. And so that was where we were starting from, that baseline piece.
Well, it's just a matter of perspective, because it makes it look like it's a 10% rise, but given the assumptions of the work that needed to be done, some could argue that you're really doing fairly well with the value engineering component of it, mitigating some of these enhancements and risks, as it were. So just an observation.
Thank you.
So on this slide, the biggest takeaway here is that we optimized the design through the value engineering process that began in June of last year, and reduced the overall costs of the projects by just over $40 million. There's some numbers there in the middle that represent how much we went through as a team. The only reason that this happens is that we collectively as a team worked really hard to evaluate each area of the plan. We focused on, there wasn't a single structure on the facility that wasn't optimized, changed, reevaluated, repositioned in order to maximize the overall return and reduce the project costs. Each member of the team came with their ideas. We evaluated each one. We prioritized each one. We looked at what the total return would be by concentrating our energy and our time on each of these individual items and what would provide the overall best value to the project and the return. The items that are listed there's 5. Those represent a really cool story. This overall story is something that I'll take forward with me in my career. It's something that we talk about a lot because this is a huge success. This does not happen on every project, not to this extent. And the only reason this happens is because we truly did all come together as a team and put every idea on the table and evaluated each and every single one and determined where to best utilize and spend our time to provide the best value to the project while not compromising the overall design integrity of the plant. The 5 items that are listed there are a domino effect story. It's when the juices start get flowing and we talk about how we can change certain things and structures change and the sizes change. And one thing led to another, and it provided just an incredible return to the project. It enhanced the O&M it enhanced the overall O&M of the facility as well, which is a huge win for us. At the end of the day, there were over 300 items that we evaluated. Again, prioritized each one based on the impact that it could have to the bottom right-hand corner of the project. Went through a very fast-paced, very structured, very tough VE session, constructability session, and approved just over 80 of those items, which resulted in the $41 million of design enhancement and reduction of cost.
Chairman, I would like to add to that, to just build on what Dan just said in the work that they did, and to echo what Commissioner Ashcraft, the point you just made about the value engineering. The time that they did this large number of review of this and the results that they got in such a compressed amount of time, do give a lot of credit to the team overall, but they brought in extra staff. They know that time is of the essence here, and I think somebody said earlier that it costs $75,000 a day. So they took that time that they normally spend over a number of months and compressed it probably to about half of their typical. I think Dan just said that, but that doesn't go unnoticed. I think the team effort and the model that we have that Aaron talked about, the CMAR, allowed us to do this in a compressed time. Because if you didn't have that amount of time savings, this dollar would be a lot higher, either operationally or the capital project. So I just want to pause for a minute to add an exclamation point to getting from where you were in the bottom of the first column at 349, I think it was, and then it jumped up to 383. But really getting it from 383 to 334 was quite the effort, and this team should be commended for the amount of work they did and the amount of time they did it.
Okay, thank you. All right. Continue.
So the next slide here is an example of something that was on the cutting board for value engineering. So this is a side stream treatment process, and what we wanted to point out with this is we could have taken this VE item and reduced the capital cost of the project by $3.7 million, but we chose to save it because over the long run it pays for itself. It pays for itself in 7 years, and then you can see by the end of 20 years, you know, it's a net of about $10 million. And what this is a side stream treatment process, so it's an innovative process that is a more efficient use of a treatment technology to address our side stream process from the plant. So happy to answer any technical questions on it, but bottom line is we didn't just shoot to get the capital cost down. We wanted the overall project to maintain its value throughout the value engineering process.
Well, let's talk a little bit about another aspect of it, and that was the ability to address the wet weather issues that are part of the Water Quality Standards Act or something thereof. It's my understanding that because of successful discussions with EPA and the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, we were able to save $100 million or more from the requirement that we would have to build underground storage to account for that wet weather flow. Can you explain that a little bit, and what was the alternative that was agreed to?
You want me to take that? So, yes, as part of the permit negotiations, in order to get a permit for our expanded facility, we were able to utilize treatment technologies instead of building the underground storage you referenced. That actually saved us $200 million, or actually over $200 million,
Wow.
not having to build that storage. Part of the value, and so we landed on a treatment technology then for treating that wet weather flow that during normal flow is filtering, so we're providing a higher level treatment during normal daily flow, but then during wet weather flow we're providing treatment to all of that flow. Part of the value engineering process was they identified a treatment technology that was actually less expensive than the one we had identified through the study phase, and so that was also part of that $41 million that Dan mentioned earlier. So we ended up saving an additional cost, taking advantage of some technology advancements over the last couple of years.
And there was no change in the water quality. We still meet the standards, is
We
that right?
still meet the standards, exactly. That's the main point, is it doesn't impact water quality. It's
Well, that's great. I don't know whose idea that was to pursue that technology, but praise is well deserved for that. And I'll say kudos to the EPA for once.
Absolutely.
And to the Kansas Department of Health and Environment for their willingness to explore changes in technology and savings that could accrue to this project and perhaps others in the future, we hope.
Thank you.
I think Ms. McCarrick was part of that, Mr. Chairman, but also John O'Neill, I think, played
John O'Neill deserves a lot
Yeah.
of credit. He's been
He
doing a
does.
lot of work with EPA and our legislators over the last several years,
Yeah.
working on this very thing, yes.
Other questions? Mr. Waters,
Chairman,
you
if
have
I
something?
could, I did want to, while this slide is up related to value engineering, I wanted to point out, this is one example where the return on the investment was of a given proposed idea was taken into consideration in value engineering. There are several others where the actual cost up front is a little higher, but you get a quick payback, and in the long run, it's a better operation and it's more cost-effective operation. That is how value engineering should always work. Sometimes value engineering is really just a cost-cutting measure, but not truly seeking the highest value. So to have these kinds of examples of this is how it's supposed to be done.
Okay.
What's the anticipated life on this new facility?
Well, I'll look to.
At least 35 years, I'm trusting.
It's more, yes.
Yeah, typically mechanically, electrically, we'd say 20 years, and then concrete, 50 to 100 years, so.
Okay, thank you.
Some other question I was going to ask, but it slipped my mind now.
Chairman, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
What is the maximum flow treatment that we can handle at this plant now, and what will it be when the new plant is fully online and running?
So I might turn to Aaron to help me answer that question. I don't know what our current peak is. I know our ultimate peak's in the 170 range.
Well, currently, the maximum we can treat there is about 10 million gallons a day at this current facility. And ultimately, we'll be able to treat 172 MGD when this plant is complete.
Wow. Okay.
All right, and I guess my other question was the schedule. Ms. Postoke Ferguson indicated that in a few weeks, we're going to have to make decisions.
It's a great segue. Tammy
So-
will cover that for us.
Okay, thank you.
So even though we're
Jumped ahead
not,
here.
oh, I'm sorry. Even though
ahead.
we're not asking for action today, I did want to preview for you when we will be coming to you for action and then the significant milestones for the project from now until completion. So the first thing, on March 29th, we will be coming to you and requesting authorization for the construction phase funding. Following that, assuming successful authorization, we will then execute the contracts and issue notice to proceed to McCarthy as the CMAR by mid-April. There are some initial work tasks that they need to accomplish before they can really start their work, and they anticipate having that done and being able to start the full diversion of flows to Kansas City, Missouri by June 25th. And then that allows them to really get going full bore on the demolition of the existing facility and then the construction. That diversion will continue until the plant is to the point where it's constructed and we've done startup, where we can start taking that flow back into the facility. That is scheduled for the end of 2021, and then that will end the Kansas City, Missouri flows, or diversions to them. And then the remainder of work that needs to be done to finish up the project will be completed by the end of June in 2022.
Mr. Klica?
And I appreciate this portion of it, and this, I think, probably the second or third time we've gone through this. I'm feeling really comfortable with the progress that you all are taking. The question I have, and I guess this may be for the county manager, when is this project coming before the public facilities for the financing?
It will not.
It will
Well,
not, we
it's-
do
it's
not
not a-
have to
it's not a
approve
PVC.
the bonds for this, or how will that be
Well,
done?
Yeah, this is not a Public Building Commission
Correct.
project. This is a wastewater project, which is a utility.
So it'll operate within that, within the utility, but
Right.
what about as far as the financing of this?
Well, the financing bonds will be issued to the fullest extent that we can without becoming contrary to federal requirements in regards
arbitrage.
to arbitrage. I think, historically, the process has been, the bonds have been issued on a cash flow basis need, or a cash flow need. But with what's projected to happen to interest rates, whether it's this project or the courthouse, we will try to maximize the bond issuance to the fullest extent we can.
In doing all the projects at one time?
Right.
Staff is reviewing that with bond
Pardon me?
counsel. Staff has currently is still underway, the review with bond counsel and outside experts.
All right.
And also with the rate modeling within wastewater as well. All these things need to be
And
considered.
again, I brought this up before, timing is going to be crucial on that one, because especially with the rates kind of going through some weird times here, I want to make sure that, we plan for that to get the best. Otherwise, the interest increases in interest costs has a real major impact on these types of projects.
Yes, with our two large projects going forward in the coming weeks and months, I think they look at that almost daily.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Wrapping up that work now.
All right.
Other questions? Susan, anything else?
Well, we'll just close in case you have any other questions, but I just want to reiterate again, our goal is to not have the Tomahawk project impact the rate projections that we shared with you last year, and we'll be discussing that, as I said, as part of the budget process here in the coming months. So.
Okay. Well, it's my understanding that this could be impacted based upon the level of debt that we are able to issue. Is that right, Joe? At one time?
Yes, it is. The opportunity to modify our typical method of cash, on a cash flow basis of issuing our bonds, it might be advantageous to accelerate that sale, do it all, or as much as possible earlier. But all of the ramifications of that are still being worked through.
Well, yeah, the decision point is, you might have a slight increase here, but you have a big interest rate, bigger interest savings over here. And so that's kind of the dynamics that we'd have to look at.
Yeah, that's what we're working to optimize, so. We'll
Mr. Ashcraft?
Finish your thought if.
No, that's it.
Okay. Two questions. On this, it looks like you're front-loading the increases. What's the thought process there? Is that due in part to the cost incurred by the Kansas City entanglements?
Yes,
Okay.
that's really the part of that is the treatment costs for having KCMO treat our flows there. And you can see once the plant goes online, those rate increases drop down.
That's the increased flow.
Yeah.
But
But those increases are cumulative, so once that flow is, that extra cost is eliminated, then you see a significant reduction in the annual increase, but you still see increases going forward?
We do,
Okay.
yes.
Back on slide 6, a follow-on question about the risk profile. You made comment, and we also had briefings with staff on this earlier in the week or last week concerning the $75,000 a day, and someone made comment that the average or the usual was $5,000 a day, so a significant difference. And I was just wondering, that risk profile potentially has a big impact on people who are going to offer up bids because of uncertainties of completing construction. I was just wondering, what options you considered rather than, if any, to the straight $75,000 a day risk penalty, is that what you call it? Builder's penalty?
Damage.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, yes.
It's a good question. So when we originally put the cost model together, that first pass of that bottoms-up estimate in June, that was a huge concern from the team's perspective because of that bottom line in relation to the original budget. So we got pretty creative. We and Penny had mentioned it, we put a few more folks on the job. We had built a very comprehensive schedule to identify the actual scope of work as it relates to the risk of delaying the project to when in fact the damages would be applied. So traditionally you would take that damage amount and you'd apply that across the whole project so that all of your subcontractors, all the contractors that are working on the project are all signing up to the same risk profile. It doesn't change depending on what your scope is or isn't. On this job, we took a very finite plan or approach and identified what is the actual scope of work and who would be affected by the real risk of the job, which is finishing late. When we did that, and you looked at the critical path and you looked at the longest path of the project, we were able to eliminate the $75,000 a day of risk to only 7 packages. They're big packages. They're the core primary packages of the project. But what we feel, now it's hard to quantify, you know, that the $10 million is 4% of the direct cost at that time. We think that's about right. It's hard to put that actual dollar value. We know it's something. I don't think it's 10%. I don't think it's 0. But the number we used was 4% of the direct cost when we put the cost model together in June. But in order to minimize that, that was the plan. We identify where's the real risk in the job. How do we minimize it to the actual packages that would impact the substantial completion date of the project, and then minimize the overall risk to all the other packages. And there's a total of 83 packages. We've got competition on every single package, which we were concerned about in June of 2017 if we would have put the blanket $75,000 a day risk profile on all the packages.
Okay. Well, does this take into consideration, and it sounds like it probably does, but of events that are beyond our control, whether it be changes in tariff laws and supply of steel, or regulatory changes, or even weather impacts? I mean, you feel like we're covered in that regard, and we won't be interjecting any unnecessary risk into this project?
I do. So regarding weather, we've built in 5 months of weather delay impact to the critical path of the overall project.
5 months over 4 years?
Yeah, over 40 months of critical path work from the beginning of the diversion, 42 months from the beginning of the diversion to essentially no longer diverting downstream. So there's that 5 months of protection in the overall project. Tariffs is obviously a hot topic lately. The subcontractors own the risk, and this is the gray area. It's typically considered reasonable. What could they have reasonably anticipated based on escalation? And we chart that very closely. If there's an anomaly, we discuss that, and we've been having a lot of conversations in the last couple of weeks based on the tariff that's been put on the table.
Well, if they figure that out, that could be very valuable information.
Understood. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to go back to slide 10 and just make a short reference. We have been building the reserve in wastewater to help mitigate the increased flow costs that we're going to have to pay Kansas City, Missouri. And I mentioned that for a couple of reasons, to make sure folks understand that we've been doing that. We get several questions about the level of reserves, and the largest single portion of our reserves is for wastewater. And that's the reason that number is as high as it is, so we can mitigate rate increases for that period of time when it's all going to Kansas City, Missouri. So as this project proceeds, that will go down, and so wanted to make that clarification. Yep. Any other questions? All right, anything else?
That's all we have for you today, sir.
All right, well, thank you very much. We'll see you again March
You're doing a great
29.
job. Appreciate
All right,
it.
thank you, good job.
Thank you.
You know, I just congratulations to all. This is a huge, huge project.
A lot of moving pieces.
And so to Black and Veatch, McCarthy, and our staff, great job. Thank you very much.